Begone, you hag who lurks in dreams, who drains our life through cries and screams. Gods bless this ward to keep me whole, and keep the Night Hag from my soul. They were like everyone else in Barovia, tired of the long sorrow from their vampiric overlord, tired of the rain that never washed anything clean, tired of surviving under eyes that could be felt even through shutters and locked doors. The Lupescus, Ion, Mara, and their 3 children had learned the secret countless others whispered behind cracked lips within the village of Barovia. The dream pastries worked. How delightful, a moment of relief from the endless apathy. One bite and the sky in your head turned to euphoria. One bite and Barovia loosened its grip upon your soul. They were common customers. The hags liked common customers. When the last copper coins were running dry and the flour had stretched as far as it would, Ion found himself standing again beneath the onion dome of the old windmill with one of his younger girls, Annabelle. The windmill's crooked crown leaned away from the storm of Castle Ravenloft's shadow to the southeast. It was as though the building tried to turn its face to the old Svalik road with an ever-welcoming presence. The raven that haunted the beam above the door hopped and cawed, wings twitching like impatient hands. Out of the way, Ion muttered to the raven, "I've come to do business." Inside, the sweet reek of pastries grappled with a harsher stench that rode up from an open barrel in the center of the room. Chickens muttered in their crate. Somewhere inside the cluttered peddler's cart, a toad croaked like a broken bell. Painted flowers bloomed on a pretty cabinet as they swayed ever so slightly from the heat of the brick oven. Morgantha was sweeping bones. Not many, just enough to say a story had ended recently. Now, I don't know about you, but here in the material plane, I wouldn't trust a wrinkly old woman sweeping bones. In Barovia, however, things work a touch differently. Ion Lupescu, the hag presented, twinkly and with a grandmother's sweetness. It's been a spell. He drew the bundle from his coat and laid it on the table. A cord of prayer beads, a brass locket with a dead woman's photograph, a silver coin that had belonged to his grandfather. "We're short today," he said in a rather somber tone, "but we'll have more when the harvest is finished from Valakai." Dearie me, you come to this door when the harvest runs dry. Her broom's straw whispered over the floor. Poor Ion. Life in the village is demanding. Your dreams are haunting, while your wife is crying and the children cannot sleep. Let us help with that. We have a fresh batch for you, darling. She nodded and rapped the broomstick twice on the floor. From the stairs, cackles dribbled through the walls as 2 other women descended. Bella Sunbane in a flour-caked apron, Ophalia Wormwiggle licking batter from a spoon. All 3 showed almost in their true form now, with a slightly blurred humanness if one wasn't paying attention. Unfortunately, the Barovians never really did. The 3 elderly ladies moved with the unhurried confidence of shopkeepers, whose victims had always called them "ma'am" with respect. Morgantha picked through Ion's little heap trinkets, from the beads to the single silver coin. A good start pumpkin, but not enough for a full batch. He swallowed. "We'll pay the rest next time." She tapped the spoon against her lip. Oh sweet pea. Knock knock. Who's there? Oh, Sir Ion, who couldn't afford a pastry and was ever so hasty. You know the price. Her rancid smell engulfed him as she approached slowly. "Give little Annabelle over and we will call it even." Bella the crone set the tray of cooling pastries on the table. Half moons lacquered to a perfect gloss. The smell made Ion's eyes sting ever so slightly. Morgantha turned the broom, poked with the handle at the shadowed stair, and pointed, as if denoting his daughter to follow them. The old woman's voice was mild. "A little prick," she said, "just to be sure." "Just a prick," he said. "To see if she..." Mara pressed her lips to Annabelle's hair as the young girl wept. "All children cry," she whispered. "All children cry." They walked together, their steps haunted by the windmill's silhouette. The door swung shut as Ion walked down the pathway towards the old Svallic road, now alone. Ion's mind had never felt so large, clumsy, and rooted. He told himself a dozen stories, quickly, to ease his burden. We will get her back. We will owe only this once. We will be better people tomorrow. Morgantha took the child with the assurance of a baker removing a loaf from a shelf. Ion then arrived home with the box of pastries like a small coffin between his fingers. His family ate, they slept, and in their dreams, Annabelle was laughing under a bakery eating treats until she was sick with joy. Ask most plainer folk what they think about night hags, and you'll hear pretty much the same answer. A crafty bunch of evil old crones. Who else are better suited to snatch up larvae and sell the stinking worms for a tidy bit of jink? Talk to the Celestials, and they'll tell you they hate hags, because hags are the villains who perpetuate the foul races of the lower planes by bartering larvae to the fiends. Fiends think a little more kindly of hags, because there's no one better at delivering quality larvae. The night hags don't care much of what anyone thinks of them. As long as they continue to acquire knowledge, wealth, and ultimately greater personal power with the selling of larvae, nothing else really matters. The mistresses of the Grey Waste sit secure in the comfort that ruling the larva trade means ruling the plane. Scholars who study the lower planes have wondered why no one has ever sought to control the Grey Waste as others have on Bartor or some layers of the Abyss. To date, not one infernal fiendlord has risen up to claim the Grey Waste for its own. Some say it's the despairing, will-sapping effect of the waste that stops anyone from even wanting to try to conquer it. But that's just not true. Fact is, the night hags rule the Grey Waste, but they don't rule by any obvious show of force. Hags are more careful, controlling this gloomy plane via their skillful manipulation of the Larvae Trade. You see, by playing the various factions in the Blood War off each other, the hags have secured their position as the planar rulers of the Grey Waste. With a lust for power that rivals even the most ambitious devils, combined with the hungry bloodlust of demons, night hags insatiably crave that which only the living provide. Commoner or prince, human or elf, all have reason to fear, as night hags hunger equally for the souls of all mortals. Having preyed upon the living for countless centuries, warnings of night hags and their powers have become the stuff of superstitions and old wives' tales. Although little truth remains in such country advice, many such tales find their basis in actual practices capable of warding off a night hag's predatory wrath. For many extraplanar creatures, it is enough to say that they always were, and thus they are now. However, night hags are as ancient as any fiend, and their similarities to the hags of the material plane raises the peculiar question of their origins. Many scholars speculate that night hags are merely planar relatives of normal hags, another breed, native to the outer planes, and different only in the same ways that anise hags differ from green hags or sea hags. However, the fearful abilities and cruel cunning of night hags make them seem like ideals of the hag race. Regardless of their origins, most of those who investigate the specifics of night hags are interested in a much different history. The countless stories and towering records of terrorized countries and lifeless villages that owe their ruin to these hag queens. Even when compared to other hags, night hags appear as grotesque crones, said to look like extraordinarily ugly human women. Such a statement does an irreparable disservice to the gender of that species. Thus, a more apt description might compare them to small, female trolls. Their skin ranging from a light purple blue all the way to near black and blistered with the foul planar diseases they carry. Nearly all night hags wear wild manes of coarse black hair with bones, severed fingers, and small trinkets woven into it in whatever manner they believe makes them appear most threatening. This grotesque coif often dangles over a night hag's face and much of her body, possibly hiding her rows of awkwardly protruding pointed teeth dripping with diseased saliva. Above, a pair of deep hollows veil hellish red pupils, little more than maddened pinpricks looking out over a sharply pointed nose. To augment their fearsome appearances, night hags often cover their grotesquely emaciated bodies in self-inflicted, tattoo-like scars. This sickly, tormented facade belies a night hag's significant strength and the threat of her wicked claws. However, many of a night hag's joints seem to bend in awkward ways, disturbing to mortal witnesses, which make them relatively slow and ungainly creatures. Night hags reproduce in a manner exceedingly foul to mortal minds, creating young to serve in their coveys or as servants. Using their polymorph spell-like ability to disguise themselves as mortal women, night hags seduce men into a meeting that often culminates in the male's death. After such a coupling, a night hag becomes pregnant for a length of time normal for women of her mate's species. At the end of this period, the night hag gives birth to a dark-haired female child, otherwise indistinguishable from others of her mate's species. Having no concept of maternal instincts, night hags always foster their children, usually to unsuspecting good-willed creatures, and even with the child's father if he still lives. At any time between the child's first birthday and puberty, a night hag might return to perform a series of despoiling rites that culminates in the child's transformation into a normal night hag. The process begins with an initial visitation during which the night hag must engage her child in a foul ceremony for an uninterrupted hour. After this initial ritual, the night hag must return 3 times, each visit 13 days after the last. On these visits, the night hag must suckle the child and feed it the flesh of a living larva, a process that takes an hour. If any of these feedings are interrupted, or if the night hag can't access the child by the end of the proper day, the child cannot be transformed into a night hag. Otherwise, the end of the final feeding initiates a rapid and irreversible transformation, and within an hour, the child becomes a full-grown night hag. Uncaring of their daughters but covetous of their uses, night hags often foster more children than they have any intention of transforming into full-blooded night hags, essentially keeping spare children littered across the plains, should their plans require more servants or their current broods dwindle. Naturally cruel beings, night hags obsess over dreams of power and endless feasts of mortal souls. They think nothing of other creatures except in how they relate to the night hag's desires. This leads night hags to relegate any creature less powerful than them to the position of either slave or meal, with slaves often merely serving as future meals. Night hags manipulate and bargain with creatures they don't believe they can defeat, in the hopes of extorting as much use as possible and perhaps leaving them vulnerable. Night hags pay little respect to the concept of racial privilege and contend with others of their race in the same manner they deal with all other creatures, with strong night hags subjugating their weaker sisters. These crones sometimes deal with others of their kind on the material plane, but never as equals and always as masters. These extraplanar hags maintain a deeply rooted sense of superiority when it comes to normal hags and cruelly dominate either an individual or whole covey. Selfish and supercilious in the extreme, night hags rarely form coveys with their own kind, and most assuredly, never with lesser hags of the material plane. When a covey of night hags does form, it most often consists of a dominant night hag and 2 weaker night hags, or even 3 night hags forced by a more powerful night hag to do her bidding. These weaker night hags might be hags the leader subjugated, or, more often, the dominant hag's own daughters. They most commonly inhabit the grim plane known as the Grey Waste of Hades, but their cruel ambitions cause them to roam far. Using portals, powerful magic items, and other planar connections, they often travel quite extensively and know much of the planes. Only the most powerful of their kind make lairs on their native planes, using legions of lesser fiends, extraplanar horrors, and their own daughters to carve out small personal empires. Weaker beings of their kind prefer nomadic existences in such infernal realms, but more often haunt wooded ruins and lonely crags near secluded towns and villages on the material plane. Their lair often consists of two lairs, one on the material plane and another on the ethereal plane. Using their etherealness, they drag materials with them from the material plane. They construct simplistic towers of stone and iron, grim, hard edifices among the ghostly vapors. These terrible lairs are little more than planar prisons, holding captives a Night Hag particularly values, or protecting her uncorrupted children during their crucial transformation period. Although these lairs might leave hostages victim to unpredictable planar dangers, Night Hags often delight in trapping their captives in the dual prisons of their grisly lair and the ghostly ethereal plane. With the ability to shift from lair to lair using her etherealness, she will spend much of her time on the ethereal plane, scheming and performing all manner of foul rites. A Night Hag would probably lair solely on the ethereal plane, rendering herself nearly undetectable to most hunters, if not for that plane's numerous threats. Between sporadic ether cyclones and the countless powerful creatures that lurk in that misty realm, the material plane sometimes offers a safer place to store possessions and captives. Night Hags engage in a strange connection to the rare petitioners of Hades known as larvae, the manifested souls of unquestionably evil creatures reborn as bloated, yellow, worm-like beings. The existence of these creatures presents one of the great mysteries of the planes. With distorted faces reminiscent of those they had in life, larvae ooze a sickening, bilious fluid and constantly writhe like giant, squirming maggots. Although the specifics of their use remain vague, Night Hags require these abominations to reproduce. Some Night Hags even gather and trade larvae to other powerful evil creatures, which use them as food, currency, and as soul stuff for unspeakable projects. Most of the memories of these larvae have been drained away, just like colour, and they form the basis for a dark trade that circulates throughout the lower planes. Fiends, undead, unscrupulous wizards and priests, and other darkly associated creatures use larvae as food, as the fulcrum of evil rituals, or in countless other nefarious ways. It is no secret why larvae are the most sought-after commodity in the lower planes. Larvae serve as the base stock from which most fiends are generated. They are truly the foundation for much of the populations of the lower planes. With sometimes millions of fiends slain daily in the Blood War, the Batezu and Tanari continually require large quantities of larvae to rebuild their armies. As the millennia pass, the fiends keep asking for more and more larvae, and so far, the hags have been able to meet demand with little or no difficulty. Liches also have a minor role in the larva trade, as they must purchase larvae from the Night Hags to maintain their unnatural undead state. A unique ability they possess is an uncanny ability to determine which mortals become larvae upon their deaths, and perhaps even know what foul deeds a soul must commit to damn it to eternity as a larva. Knowing that these irredeemably corrupt souls hold value among the most depraved creatures of the planes, Night Hags often seek out powerful evil individuals, either to slay them and claim the newly spawned larva, or to corrupt their mortal beings into the abominations they covet. From her strategically chosen lair, a Night Hag ventures into the homes of her victims nightly and with ease, afflicting a creature, savouring its torment as its body weakens and dies. The Crone's magic is focused upon the evil deeds and gains power from that basis. Therefore, it's rare for these hags to attempt their afflictions on creatures who follow righteousness. Once they have decided the town, they often prey first upon the outcasts of a settlement. Few become concerned when the criminals and rabble-rousers of their community die in their sleep. Many even consider it a blessing, until the Night Hag's nocturnal assaults kill a notable person or someone considered innocent. Often, a community with a Night Hag lairing nearby believes some kind of plague resistant to all forms of natural and magical healing afflicts them. Such a belief might even cause a country to quarantine an area, effectively dooming it to a slow death at the claws of a voracious Night Hag. As some of the populace sickens and dies from the hag's dream haunting, even those who suspect an otherworldly force can rarely hope to survive a combat against a Night Hag. On the rare occasions a Night Hag is suspected or discovered, actually finding her lair presents a formidable challenge. Night Hags prefer small, secluded caves, hollows or ruins, choosing a lair both difficult to reach and that elicits fear from those who come near. Riddling the areas near their homes with magic traps and their servants, and with no need to sleep, Night Hags are rarely caught unaware. They take great offense to intruders and often possess a variety of unique magic traps and weapons to deal with interlopers. Ion moved along the main street with his collar up and his gaze down until the posters made him lift his head. Torn parchments, rain-puckered and thumb-worn, crowded the message board outside the Blood of the Vine, the church gate, the leaning post by Bildrath's. Smudged charcoal faces peered from the paper. A crooked bow in the hair, a missing front tooth, a dreary face on a young girl. Annabelle. Someone had pressed a sprig of a dried grey petal into one, as if the people of Barovia believed flowers could anchor hope to their return. Behind him, the sobbing faded. Ahead, the village stretched in a grey hush, yielding its streets one by one. He walked on with the weight of that lesson in his chest, knowing that in Barovia, the dearest currency is the future, and the hags buy it cheap. The posters now swayed, while a gust of wind tore several of them from their holdings. A cleric knelt at an altar within a church on a slight rise, with sagging edifices of stone and wood. He whispered, in a prayer to a broken altar. As he does this, the sound of small wooden wheels rolling across the damp cobbles breaks the stillness. A hunched figure bundled in rags pushes a rickety wooden cart through the fog singing, 1 pastry for your troubles, 2 for your shame, 3 for the night that won't speak your name. Coins if you have them. If not, be still. Bye-bye, lullaby, Barovia, close your eyes, dream, while the fog of Castle Ravenloft keeps watch on the skies.